Roe v. Wade has been overturned, which is amazing. And among other things, a slap in the face of despair and the despairing, the people who say things can't be done, and also in the face of the people who said there was no difference between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, the never-Trumpers, I think, many of whom were driven insane by Trump and by the fact that a bad man, a man who had many, many flaws, was making a good president. I think this is really a decisive moment. The Constitution, I obviously am not going to have time to read the decision. It looks like it's pretty much the Alito decision we saw before, which I did read in its entirety. It says the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Roe and Casey are overruled, and the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elected representatives. Sorry. It's important, because when they decided Obergefell, terrible decision, though I have nothing against gay marriage, really, personally, but when they decided that, Scalia had this wonderful dissent where he said, the substance of today's decree is not of immense personal importance to me. And this is remembered, a devout Catholic was saying this. He said, it's not important to me the substance of gay marriage. He said the law can recognize as marriage whatever sexual attachments and living arrangements it wishes and can accord them favorable civil consequences from tax treatment to rights of inheritance. The law has the right to permit gay people to marry. He said those civil consequences and the public approval that conferring the name of marriage evidences can perhaps have adverse social effects, but no more adverse than the effects of many other controversial laws. It's not of special importance to me what the law says about marriage. It is of overwhelming importance, however, who it is that rules me. Today's decree says that my ruler and the ruler of 320 million Americans, coast to coast, is a majority of the 9 lawyers of the Supreme Court. And this is the problem with Roe v. Wade. I mean, obviously, it's the dead babies, as Norm Macdonald might have said, it's killing the babies. But also the problem with it as law is that it was an act of domination of the court. There is no right to abortion in the Constitution. That's simply the way it is. And here's the thing. A lot of right-wingers, when I was saying that it caused violence, it stripped us of our rights. It didn't confer on us a right. It stripped us of our right. People were liberalizing abortion laws in many of the states. They were arguing, they were debating, they were doing what Americans do, just like they were with gay marriage. They were coming to an agreement, where people would be disgruntled, but they would know, as Scalia says in his dissent on Obergefell, they know that if they lost in the elections, they could win next time. That's the living republic. That's the living republic. That's the republic that can't justify violence. That's a republic where you can't justify violence because you know you are responsible to the laws of your fellow citizens, and those laws can be changed, and you can convince your fellow citizens through arguments. The violence that has come, the division between us, the fact that these people who say, I believe in this, and if you don't believe it, you're hateful, the fact that they now rule the elites, that they are the elite voices, arises from Roe v. Wade. The fact that you cannot defend this. And when I say you can't defend it, a lot of right-wingers get upset about the previous decision that conferred the right to privacy on people. And it's a funny decision. It was Griswold, it was called. And this was 1965, and it allowed a married couple. It said you can't stop a married couple from getting birth control because that's part of their right to privacy. And the right to privacy is in the penumbras cast by the emanations of the law. And everybody laughed at that on the right. But I thought, no, that's actually really true. There are rights in the that we have that are not enumerated in the Constitution. And it says that in the Constitution. The Ninth Amendment is the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So in other words, just because the right isn't mentioned in the Constitution doesn't mean it's not there. Now, guys like Scalia didn't like the Ninth Amendment because he said, well, how are we supposed to interpret that? But I think you can interpret some of them. For instance, I think there's a right to travel on honest business between state and state. I don't think that Oregon should be allowed, can say, you can't come here because you're from New York and we don't like New Yorkers. I don't think that that's the way it works. So there was a right to privacy. But how does the right to privacy eliminate the right to life of a living baby? That's something, a profound, deep question Obviously I'm very strongly on one side of that question, but I can see how a person of goodwill can make the other argument. And I would sit down with that person and have that argument. I have been that person. So I know I changed my mind because I lost the argument with a friend. I did. We argued till 2 a.m, and I went to bed and I thought, I just lost that argument about abortion. And it took me 20 years to accept it. That's how hard it was for me to change my mind on something that I knew was so important to the people in my social set. So I have sympathy with that. I have no sympathy when you take that incredible, deep question of when life begins, when a person has the right to life, and you, by fiat, strip me of my right to make laws about that. That's why, for instance, religious people swept into politics with Reagan. That's why they had really kind of sat it out, thinking, well, the world is the world and you're going to all do what you do and go to hell, but we're going to live our life. But then suddenly they thought, no, you can't make a law in your state forbidding abortion, even though the vast majority of people believe in that. And it's the difference between a negative right and a positive right? I mean, to say what most of the Bill of Rights is what the government can't infringe upon, right? You can infringe upon your right to carry guns. You can't infringe upon your right to free speech. But it's kind of like it's put negatively. When you say you have the right to an abortion, you've stripped everybody else of their rights. You've stripped everybody else of their rights to say this very profound metaphysical question: is this baby a human being? Right? That's a profound metaphysical question. And what you're saying is, we'll decide that for you. Well, you don't have to discuss that. This is not a free country. That free country thing, that's on the advertisements. But then you get here and no, forget it. That's how this violence came about. That's how we got into this violence, into this period of violence, this period of division. I've been around now for I'm 130 years old, I believe, and I remember in America where it was a source of pride to Americans that we could disagree intensely and be friends. It was a source of great, a source of great justification in our lives, that we could sit and have a beer and scream at the top of our lungs at one another. And in fact, the guy I had this argument about abortion, and it was a wild, yelling, late night argument. He's the oldest friend I have, and I love the guy still. And I think that that was something that we cherished about America. It was taken away from us with Roe v. Wade. There is simply no right to eliminate the humanity of a baby in the Constitution. And you see this, it's so funny, you see this, if I'm using the word funny properly, you see this on Twitter because of the gun ruling that just came out. The gun ruling, the Supreme Court said, the right to bear arms is not a secondary right. And New York had this, I think it was over 100 years old law that said you could get a concealed carry if you could prove to the government that you had a special right to self-defense, right? And the court said, well, no, you don't have to prove to the government that you have a right to free speech. You have that right. And gun rights are exactly the same. I mean, there are certain things certain rights that you just have. And so a lot of people were on Twitter saying, oh, well, we have a right to carry guns, but we don't have a right to carry an abortion. How does the world turn so upside down? But it's in the Constitution, which is the law of the land, and I think that the left is going nuts. The left is going nuts for a very, very simple reason. I'm going to show you a video that it's another one of these montage videos, and it's something that's being discussed in the media, which is, are they being too fair to Republicans? I swear this is true. They're actually having these discussions. I couldn't include the whole thing because it's just too long, but Brian Stelter's on there. Lester Holt is in there. And let's just play a little bit. It's cut 26.
If one party, the dominant wing, the Trump wing of one party, is actually trying to overthrow American democracy, you as a newspaper have to be against that. You can't be neutral on that. You can't present both sides on that.
We cannot have a false sense of equivalency about what is happening when it comes to politics in our country. There's one party right now that's not operating in fact. that has been misleading the American people, and that is the Republican Party, sadly, of which I used to be a member of the Republican Party. Cannot pretend as journalists that it is equal. It is not. Democrats are doing their Democrat thing, and they're being, liberal, and they want all these things. But that's the way normal politics operates, and we can deal with those things.
There are far too many in our profession who are really normalizing what's happening right now in an attempt to be or appear objective, in an attempt to say, well, we're going to treat both political parties equally, when we clearly have, in this moment, one political party that is passing anti-democratic policies, that is upholding people with authoritarianism ideas.
So that's how when I call they say it's a bubble and I say it's an iron lung, Lester Holt goes on, he says, we have to be fair to the truth. But the idea that the people who reported on Russian collusion and Hunter Biden was Russian disinformation and the Wuhan flu didn't come from Wuhan, those people don't know what the truth is. The best they can do is gather the facts. And so their argument is untrue on the face of it, right? Because half of this country is Republican obviously they're not registered Republican. Let's say half of this country is to the right of center and half of this country is to the left of center. And a very small sliver agrees with Don Lemon. A very small sliver is what he represents of those woke, crazy people who even in the places where I go, where people are really far left, people are saying under their breath, I don't agree with this. I don't agree that a man can become a woman. I don't agree with that stuff. These are far left people, but they still don't agree with this woke stuff. That is the bubble that they're in. So it's false reasoning. And because they are so closed off, they don't understand. They don't understand that this is what the country believes. The country believes in its laws. It believes it can make laws themselves without the help of the Supreme Court, like slamming down on them, declaring things that aren't true. The effects of Roe v. Wade have just been catastrophic. They've been catastrophic to what they've done to the culture of this country. I'll read you something that's kind of hilarious, but it really does relate to Roe v. Wade, and it'll get me. I know I was a little overcome there for a minute, for which I apologize, but this meant a lot to me. I think it probably meant a lot to a lot of you. Hilarious story in the New York Post. I was loveless. This is serious. It is serious, but it's just a hilarious story. I was loveless before I married a rag doll, and now we have a baby. And this is a story from. It's not from America, but it's just so hilarious. It's a woman named Marivone Roca Mores. Complained to her mother about being single and stressed about not having a dance party. So to cheer her up, her mother made her a life-size rag doll named Marcello. And she said, when I first met Marcello and I was introduced to him, I fell in love with him. It was love at first sight because I didn't have a partner to dance with. I would go to these dances but wouldn't find a partner. Then he entered my life and everything makes sense. And she says, he's the man I always wanted in my life as a ragdoll. And now they've gotten pregnant. She has a baby ragdoll. The picture is in the paper of her with a baby ragdoll. It's funny, but it's sad. But I want to compare it to this article in the Washington Post that was supposed to be an anti getting rid of abortion, whatever you want to say, a pro-abortion article, right? And it's about this young girl, 18 years old, and she was in Texas, and she wanted an abortion, but she found out about the law after she found out she was pregnant. The Texas abortion ban went into effect. But that's what they call it. An abortion ban. It's not an abortion ban. It just cuts abortion back to very early on. And so it begins with what's supposed to be this tragic scene. She had twins. And that's the headline. The Texas teen wanted an abortion. She now has twins. And here's the description. This is the opening. And this is supposed to be a tragic description, like a guy in hunger, he's trying scrounging for food or something like that, the way you write a feature story. And it says, running on 4 hours of sleep, the 18-year-old tried to feed both babies at once, holding Kendall in her arms while she tried to get Olivia to feed herself, her bottle propped up by a pillow. But the bottle kept slipping and the baby kept wailing, and Brooke's boyfriend, Billy, wouldn't be home for another 5 hours. Please, fussy girl, Brooke whispered. I mean, is there a mom on earth who hasn't been through this? And she goes through, and it's just like, it's all so tragic. She has these two children, and then she ends up marrying the father. And their tragic ending is, if it wasn't for the Texas law, Brooke knew she might not be standing there getting married. She'd probably be studying for her next exam while Billy mastered some new trick on the quarter pipe. I guess that's a skateboard. She liked to think they'd still be together, spending their money on movie tickets and Whataburger instead of diapers and baby wipes. She told herself that alternate life didn't matter anymore. She had 2 babies she loved more than anything else in the world. That's the last line of the story. That's the end of the story. Because they can't tell the difference between a baby and a rag doll. They're the same as that woman with her rag doll baby. When I said, I think it was last week, when I said Roe v. Wade decreed that we are matter, decreed that we have no spiritual existence, decreed, they would make fun of religious people when they would say, well, the body is ensouled, but truly, is there no difference between 2 cells that are separate from one another and 2 cells that become a unit and a new thing? Isn't that what life is? Isn't life all our, when I die, and I know that's never going to happen, but when I die, your cells go off on their own, right? But now they make me. Is there no difference between that? Is there no metaphysical difference? According to Roe v. Wade, there was not. According to Roe v. Wade, included in the right to privacy, was the absolute right to eliminate the inner life, the life of another person. And when you think where the violence comes from in our society, when you think why it doesn't matter to people, where people shoot each other with such heartlessness or wish each other dead on Twitter, or just commit violence in the streets when they don't get their way, think about that. Think about the fact that your right to privacy, according to Roe v. Wade, included your right to erase the life of another person. And again, I'm willing to sit and argue with people of goodwill, and that's what's going to happen now. And that's my hope for the country. That's why I find this. Look, this may devolve into civil war before I get out of here. I may not be able to make it home. That's the bad version, and bad things can always happen, but good things can happen too, as this decision proves. And I've said this before, but it's worth repeating. The Civil War, the act of holding slaves, soiled the idea of federalism, states' rights, because they were using states' rights for an evil purpose. But this soiled the idea of federal control, because they were using federal control for an evil purpose, the purpose of eliminating the right to life of an infant. And now, I think, we will become more federalist in this moment. We are going to have to, unless we're going to tear each other apart with violence, unless we're going to accede to these 10% people of the wokes and maybe 5% on the right who are fascists, unless we're going to give up our country to those guys, we're going to have to come together and start arguing with each other. And who knows? I may hear arguments where I say, yeah, I don't like abortion, but maybe it should be legal here or there. Who knows? We are going to have open minds. We're going to have to sit down and have beers with the people we don't like again. And that, I think, is going to create a federalism of culture. I think people are going to go to the states that retain a culture that they recognize. And the less the federal government has control over Arkansas, the more Arkansas will be Arkansas, and the more New York will be New York. And we know those are going to be different places. If you want to raise your children without having to tell them, as a parent was complaining to me the other day, if you want to raise your children without having to tell them that the rainbow represents homosexuality instead of God's promise not to destroy the world again, you'll have to move to that state and live in that place. And I think that that's a better country. That's the way the country was conceived of. That's the reason we have guns, was to defend that country, to defend the states in their rights. And I think that could happen again. And it would make what's sometimes called the Benedict option, where we all live in our little corners, is not what we want. What we want is federalism. We want a patchwork of states with different cultures, different lives, different laws, all held together by our right to freedom. This decision makes that possible. Will it happen? We don't know the future, but it could happen. It could happen. And again, I want to say that is a blow to all those people. And we know this is prevalent on the right. All those people who say it's done, it's over, you can't win, it's done. The left owns everything, they control everything. The news media said this, and I heard this on CNN, and I heard this there, and it's never going to change. It does. And sometimes it takes something radical. Sometimes it's a bolt from the blue, like Donald Trump. It doesn't look like you think it's going to look. The future never looks like you think it's going to look. This is a good day. This is a good day, and we have to hope good things come from it. And I think that's a real, real possibility. If you like this content, and I know you love this content, subscribe and subscribe to the Andrew Klavan Podcast.